Hello, my name is Dr. Jacqueline, and I'm with DTP-Leadership Group. This is Hot Topic Bold Talk. My topic tonight is Kamala Harris, the candidate of pragmatism, progress, change, and hope. So I wanted to introduce what I've learned about Kamala Harris and what I think will definitely be helpful to you. I want to start with this podcast with what I've learned about Kamala Harris and what she would be like as a president. And it comes from an article by Time magazine entitled, "What Kind of President Would Kamala Harris Be?" They covered her when she did a speech at Carnegie Mellon University on October 10th. And Charlotte Alter has written this, and it's an excellent look at Kamala Harris. Now, after the speech, Time spoke to 20 current and former Harris campaign advisors, former aides in her vice presidential and Senate offices, senior officers from each of the past 5 presidential administrations, and a range of policy experts to really write this article about her. By far, this is the most thorough look at Harris I've seen published, and it has major points that she made in her speech. So here is the description from Time magazine about the group she was meeting with at Carnegie Mellon. She was addressing a sedate audience in suits and ties. The vice president outlined plans to strengthen small businesses, cut taxes on the middle class, and build more affordable housing. And she said, "I'm a capitalist," she told the Pittsburgh group. And she detailed how she would invest in the startups and increase public-private partnerships, and describing an approach to economic growth that stressed stability. So she is the candidate. If you want things to change in America, she's the one that has the plan. Now, let's understand what her vision is for America. Some of the comments that came out from the interviews was people want to know more about her. To examine this question is the reason they decided to interview all these people I have mentioned. One of the comments that was made about her is, "Harris is more practical than ideological, and she's running a campaign that is focused on change. She's chosen to be focused on her opponent, and so for Harris, policy specifics are in service to the larger goal of her campaign, which is to present a creditable alternative to Donald Trump." So I think you will see in what I'm describing here, and I definitely summarize some of the points, but I've tried to cover everything that was covered in this excellent Time article. But I think in this, the article is kind of separated into various sections. I've named them different things from what the article said, but I think they will help you focus on what was said in the article. Harris's economic strategy, a path to growth and stability. I think it's very exciting because she's not focusing on the wealthy like Trump does. She is focusing on the middle class and focusing on housing, which you'll find out is seldom addressed by any presidential candidate in the past history. So it says in the article, at Carnegie Mellon, Harris offered the most detailed look at her economic plans since taking over for Biden. She proposes a $50,000 tax deduction to help Americans start more small businesses, and a $6,000 child tax credit for families in the first year of our baby's life. She plans to extend $35 insulin for all Americans and eliminate degree requirements for 500,000 federal jobs. So she's trying to show people that you don't have to have an education. If you have experience, then you will be a great candidate for some of these jobs she wants to create. She wants to invest in research and development in new manufacturing industries and trim red tape down to further the Biden's administration overhaul of America's infrastructure. Perhaps more than any other candidate for president in recent memory, they say, Harris is focused on solving America's housing crisis. She plans to offer $25,000 in down payment assistance for the first time home buyers, a tax credit to incentive builders, and pledge to build a 3 million affordable housing unit in her first term. The next we cover is really Harris as a president and continuing a kind of a fresh perspective of her. One of the ways I can understand what they're talking about is to imagine Harris as president as an upgrade of the current administration. There will be new features and better packaging of ideas and concepts. There is a difference in Harris from Biden. She's more easily talks about abortion rights than Biden ever did. She speaks with more empathy about the struggling and suffering of the Palestinian citizens in Gaza, and has put housing and small businesses at the center of her plans for the strengthening of the middle class. That is the greatest number of us in America. Hers today is different from her past. Again, the word pragmatic is used again. And I like what she says about her changes. When asked on 60 Minutes about her shift since 2020, she said her time as vice president has included a lot of listening and consensus building. Forging compromise is not a bad thing, she said, as long as you don't compromise your values. What she means, according to her aides, is that her goals remain the same: affordable health care, a strong middle class, but she is flexible about how she can achieve it. She is flexible about how she can achieve these things. Harris is a stark contrast from Trump. What is interesting about her is it's easy to see what she stands for and how she is different from Trump and his mega Republicans. Harris is running on what we won't do. She won't do as much as what she would do. She won't curb abortion rights as Republicans want to do. She won't impose Trump's blanket tariffs, which he's so interested in, which most economists believe would raise prices and could throw the country into a recession. Hers are more narrowly targeted because she knows what she wants as a result. She wants to initiate the mass deportation of undocumented immigrants, as Trump promises, or fire legions of civil servants and replace them with mega loyalists, which would be disastrous for our government. She won't attempt to overturn the results of free and fair elections, as Trump has done. Now let's look at the campaign realities about her, because pragmatism is a winning strategy for her. The Time article reminds me of what it's like in the past when Trump was not on the political scene. They begin this section talking about her as once upon a time, presidential candidates compared health care plans or tax policies when competing for votes. These days, a policy-heavy campaign can weigh you down. Elizabeth Warren lost to Biden because of her policies rather than what Biden was focusing on campaign on, which is restoring the soul of the nation. When we look at Trump's own campaign structure, it's structured around one-liners. That means he has not ever gone into depth about anything and there's no evidence of any ideas about what he would do. Trump showed in his debate with Harris that he had no plan for overhauling the American healthcare system, but he was focused on it throughout his presidency. None of that has caused him an iota of support. Instead of policy, many voters are making their decisions based on their tribal allegiance or their vibes, which is one reason Harris's approach may be a winning strategy. For many, the fact that she is not Trump is reason enough to vote for her. Running against mega Republicans has boosted Democrats to victory in scores of elections since 2016, whether those candidates had well-defined policies or not. She knows that very few people are going to choose between her and Donald Trump based on some details of economic policy or strategy or some full-fledged proposals. She's not pressuring this and presenting these kinds of things, says David Wessel, who's the director of fiscal and monetary policy at the Brookings Institute, a nonpartisan think tank. It's a strategy to win the election. What reason is there to put out detailed economic plans if your opponent is just throwing snowballs? And that's what Trump is doing with his one-liners. It is interesting to hear what happens when someone joins Harris's staff. There are several examples, but one of them is that Harris is often challenges the new staff member to see if they can vision what they would be looking for in a photo album of a wedding. Harris's question is rhetorical, since she knows that the person will be looking for themselves in the pictures. Harris's former domestic policy advisor said, you want to see if you're in their vision of what their day was. Harris makes her point with the staff member by acknowledging. That's how the American people feel when they're listening to us talk. Are they in our vision when we see the future of our country? That is the big difference in her and Trump. She is very interested in the people in this country and what our future will be. Here are some direct quotes from the article, and I am going to read them to you because I think they're very important. I'd like for you to hear what Time magazine said. This approach, more than any ideology or economic theory, animates Harris's style of governance. How does policy feel to the people who are experiencing it? One aide recalls a conversation about transportation infrastructure in which the vice president asked how the outcome would work for a mother pushing her stroller down the street. Another ally recalls how, after hearing small business owners tick off the burdens of paperwork, Harris worked to automate the way small business owners pay taxes. When discussing abortion restrictions, she often describes how painful it must be for a patient to wait in a line at TSA while flying out of the state to get reproductive care. She puts a tremendous amount of capital on how having people make sure they're really thought through the everyday life and experience of Americans. She has all of us in her mind. Here's another quote. Harris has put abortion at the center of her campaign with a promise to suspend the filibuster to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade. She would extend Biden's initiatives on infrastructure, climate, and jobs, while adding new ones to build more affordable housing, investing in small businesses, and cutting taxes on working families. On October 8th, she proposed a new Medicare benefit to help families pay for home health aides for seniors and the disabled. I've just read an article where Trump could destroy Social Security in just a 4-year period with his plan. To finance all this, she proposes increasing the long-term capital gains tax on the people who make more than $1 million a year and restoring 28% corporate tax that existed under previous Democratic and Republican presidents. The goal is to lower your costs by cutting your taxes, to lower housing costs, to lower pharmaceutical costs, says Brian Dees, who served as the director of National Economic Council under Biden and is now one of Harris's top executive advisors. By many measures, the economy has thrived under the Biden-Harris administration, Times says, with 16 million new jobs created, unemployment hovering around 4%, and manufacturing jobs at a 10-year high, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. GDP growth is about 3% this year, and the stock market keeps hitting all-time highs. But even if the data is good, the economic vibes are bad. Housing costs have particularly skyrocketed over the past decade, which is why Harris has put housing affordability at the heart of her economic agenda. She thinks about all of us in attempting to give us a chance. And she is asking the ones that make 1 million or more to pay some of the taxes they need to make in order to help those of the middle class. In addition to the proposal for the first-time homebuyers, which could be whittled down to pass in a divided Congress, so she knows how to get this through Congress. She's proposed a significant expansion of lower-income housing tax credit, a popular and long-time standing bipartisan initiative that incentive developers to build more affordable rentals. She also is proposing a tax cut designed to encourage more homes to be built for the first-time homeowner, and a $40 billion innovative fund to help with all this. Housing experts say no other presidential candidate in recent memory has proposed such a detailed plan. For years, housing affordability was a silent crisis, says Dennis Shea, who leads the housing program at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Now, he says, it's on the front burner. Think of all the things that can be done with what she has just proposed. Harris has also proposed several ways to ease burdens on small businesses, which provides nearly half of Americans' jobs. Helping small business was part of her White House portfolio, and even conservative critics acknowledge she's been attentive to the issue. In addition to offering a $50,000 tax deduction to help new small businesses offset startup costs, she proposes easing permitting and automatic processes with a goal of 25 million new startup applications in her first term. If you ask small business owners what they don't like, they will always say it's trying to get those permits and also trying to get licensed. The paperwork has gotten too much, says Karen Mills, who runs the Small Business Administration under President Obama. It's the first time I've heard someone listen to what needs to be really done. Goldman Sachs has announced in September that they estimate a stronger economy and more job growth under a Harris presidency than the second term with Trump. At the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, they forecast that Trump's plans would increase the deficit 5 times as much as Harris would. 5 times as much as Harris would. So she's not only going to save us some deficit, but she's going to create some opportunities for the middle class. Taken together, Harris's economic plans are good for lower and middle income Americans and small businesses and tough on high net worth households and corporations, says Mark Zandi, a chief economist at Moody's, who has predicted a Harris victory. Her proposals are not going to change the growth rates of the economy in a meaningful way, Cindy adds, but it does change who benefits the most from that. And that's going to be low and middle income households where the need is really there to change and to do something different. Now let's look at Harris and foreign policy and immigration. Here's an interesting contrast between Harris and Biden's view of the world. And I think it presents some interesting ideas. Biden's view of the world is a contest between democracy and authoritarianism. Harris, a former prosecutor, sees it through the premise of rules and norms, a fight between those who uphold the rules-based order and those who undermine it. As a Californian who once represented Silicon Valley, she sees technology as a crucial part of America's global leadership and would put it at the center of her foreign policy. So I think this is an important thought that she is portraying in her foreign policy. One of her major accomplishments is what she did in her diplomatic assignment she had from Biden. She stemmed the flow of migrants arriving in the U.S. by addressing the economic and socially difficult conditions that existed in the northern triad countries of Central America, which are El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. In an effort to improve life in the region, Harris helped launch a private-public partnership that drove big companies to invest more than $5 billion in order to improve these three countries, and so start affecting the flow of immigration into the U.S. The immigration issues for the United States could have been solved if Trump had not interfered with the passage of the bipartisan immigration bill, which Harris supports. She keeps talking about getting it passed. That would have hired 1,500 new Border Patrol agents, improved the asylum process, and paid for new fentanyl inspection machines. Though she is a daughter of immigrants, Harris is not as sympathetic to some of the immigration advocacy, says Doris Meisner, a senior fellow at the Migration Policy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank. She's sympathetic to immigrants, but she's also going to be strong on the fact that there needs to be control and discipline and consistency to the way that we do things. When we look at the Middle East crisis, Harris has condemned the atrocities committed by the October 7th attack. She promotes Israel's right to defend itself and called for a ceasefire with the return of hostages. Some supporters glean signs of greater sympathy from Harris for the citizens in Gaza, even if the distinctions are subtle and rhetorical. But here's what I think is some interesting comments about her. What I sense from her is that she will be less accommodating of Israel even than Biden was, said Michael Allen, who served on President George W. Bush's National Security Council. She's more progressive than Biden, so I think she'll be more inclined to the point of view that the Israelis, especially their prime minister, have prosecuted the war and have pursued the war too aggressively. A Harris aide said in a statement that she has a long time and unwavering commitment to the security of Israel, and added that she shares Biden's large goals of de escalation, a hostage deal, and a ceasefire. Now, the Time article is very honest about Harris, and here's something I want to mention. Harris has not given an address focused solely on foreign policy, and she is viewed mostly as a supporting character in Biden's administration overseas dramas. I don't think anybody with a straight face could really say that she's considered a foreign policy powerhouse, says Eldridge Colby, a national security expert who served in the Trump Pentagon and argues for a tougher approach on China. Her closest foreign policy advisor is Philip Gordon, that has served Democratic presidents since Bill Clinton, and he has aides are more likely to stay the course than to seek remaking American strategies. Harris's presidency, says Colby, would mean a generation younger, more progressive in their vision of what needs to be done in foreign policy. And what a tremendous thing. We don't have to go back to the past. We can stay in the present and move forward. Now, let's look at the stakes of this 2024 election. To Republicans' dismay, Harris's carefully policy rolled out appears to be working. When she entered the race, Trump had an decisive lead on many of the issues voters say they consider most important: immigration, the economy, and the cost of living. Polls show Harris, and I know it's getting close, and every day we have a change in the polls, but this is in the article itself on October 10th, so I'm going to present it. Polls show Harris beginning to ease this edge. Harris is virtually tied with Trump on who voters trust to handle the economy, and only narrowly trails him now on an immigration, according to the September AP poll. Now, they're going to change every day, so it's just a matter of what's going on in our country on that day prior to an election. Now, she continues to lead by broad margins on health care, abortion rights, and climate change. If you've seen all the hurricanes we've had, we know we have a climate change that is a serious problem. She can address that. Two recent polls found that most Americans see Harris as a candidate representing change. And I think change is what people want. So if you want change, Harris is your candidate. Whether it's change from Biden or change from Trump, Harris supporters have seized that mantle. The chant at her rallies is, "We're not going back." I truly appreciate the comments from her aides that argue her current platform is rooted in political reality. Now, that's very important because I'm tired of not living in reality, and I'm tired of living in misinformation that tries to distort what's going on. I love the idea of having someone that wants to live in political reality. She's guided by pragmatism, not ideology, says Dees. This is it increases and shows another person that looks her that way. A top executive advisor. That doesn't mean we can't set big goals, but it means we need to be highly practical and constantly ask ourselves the question, is this working? And if it's not, try something else. This is the final paragraph from the article. Remember, this a great deal of this was about her Carnegie Mellon speech. As Harris left her economic policy speech at Carnegie Mellon, students lined up along the street, waiting sullenly for her motorcade. As the line of black cars passed the crowd, Harris appeared in the window, waving through the glass, her face framed by the window like a living postage stamp. The crowd began to cheer. and the girl standing next to me started crying. Her name was Naomi, an 18-year-old with long curly hair. I asked her if there was a particular policy proposal of Harris's that excited her. Honestly, she said, not that much. She brings a lot of hope and optimism. I know what I don't like about Donald Trump. Let's look at Harris versus Trump and see the real sharp contrast. I want to go to an article by Colbert King with the Washington Post, who wrote an article entitled, "This election isn't about changing minds. There's no convincing Trump's supporters that he shouldn't be president, but he can be beaten." And it was published on October 4th, 2024 at 1:27 p.m. Central Eastern Standard Time. His clear and precise and concise statements about what Trump is best described by these statements. And this is what he describes and how he describes Trump, but he begins by talking about other presidents. The presidents of my lifetime, from Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower to Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, have taken care to honor the oath of their high office. Richard M. Nixon resigned in disgrace. Jimmy Carter, who has outlived them all, served with great dignity and purpose. The twice impeached, criminally convicted Trump belongs in a separate category. He is a pompous, overblown underachiever who cultivates worshipful behavior and openly believes he's due praise as a matter of right. Said Trump a year ago, "I'm your warrior, I'm your justice, and for those who've been wronged and betrayed, I'm your retribution." Such dictatorial language, of course, is not rare in the annals of world history. It has led to the dangerous places and desperate suffering. But never before have we heard it from a person who once held and seeks to hold again the highest office in America. Never before Trump. The decision is not Trump's to make. He cannot crown himself. His mega cohorts cannot praise and adore him into the White House. The choice is yours. So I'm asking you to go vote. Another article entitled, "As Steely Liz Cheney at Harris's side calls it our duty to reject Trump," by Eric Green and by Kathy Rogers on October 3rd in the New York Times. As you know, you'll have references at the end of this podcast, so you'll be able to look them up if you want to. During her speech, Ms. Cheney brought up the fresh details into Mr. Trump's apparent nonchalance, which he is implored to ensure the safety of his vice president, Mike Pence, whom rioters had threatened to hang on January 6, 2021. "So what?" the former president said, according to the brief. Ms. Cheney told the group and the crowd, "We have the responsibility, all of us, to remind people that our institutions don't defend themselves." She added, "We, the people, defend our institutions." This is a major step in a woman devoted to the United States of America, who stands to defend our nation, and she's done it all along. As described in the article, she is a staunch conservative, former lawmaker who is pro-gun, anti-abortion, and hawkish on national security issues. Days later, her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, said he would also vote for Ms. Harris. In The Atlantic on October 3rd, 2024, by David Graham, is this article. "There's no such thing as an October surprise." It's about Jack Smith's new filing, which shows why January 6th should hurt Trump. So share this with people. Here's the information that Liz Cheney was referring to in her speech with Kamala Harris. In Smith's account, Trump knew he was lying about having won the 2020 election. He instigated the riot at the Capitol. And of course, these actions had nothing to do with his official role as president. Smith also asserts that he has a forensic and other evidence proving that Trump spent the afternoon of the riot doing exactly what many people assumed, sitting at the White House, watching Fox News, and strolling through Twitter for hours to do anything to rather than to pacify the rioters, or rather than defending the Capitol. So he knew. I've always thought that the only reason Trump is running so he can try to get rid of all his criminal accusations that are against him, and to not have to deal with himself, because he doesn't take responsibility. And I think it's important to look at it again. He was sitting at the White House watching Fox News and strolling through Twitter for hours to do anything to pacify the rioters, or rather than defending the Capitol. So he didn't bother to do anything to try to manage them or encourage them to do something, because he sent them. I will end with Bill Pensie's comments in his newsletter on Sunday, October 6th. 4 years ago, many of us saw the election as the finish line where if we just got in first, the nightmare would be over. But Biden's win never stopped the assault on goodness and decency. The blatant lies and open rejection of truth only grew these past 4 years, to where now real hope of working together to solve the very problems we have in America is gone. We really are on the brink of losing our democracy. Climate change is no longer the future. It is here now. We have seen it in Florida. We've seen it in North Carolina. Much of America is now unsurable. And if we don't find a way to break the Republicans' defense of fossil fuel industries in a decade or two, much of America will be unlikable and unlivable. And the good news is that your voice still matters, he says. You care for others. People notice that people see your wisdom. People trust your voice. Use your voice to run out every vote on 11/5/2024. Make sure everyone around you has a well thought out functional plan to have their votes be counted. And Pensie's ends by saying, but I'm telling you right here and now that the work won't end that day, the election day. We have to get back to America where the truth was once important and matters. It's our only hope. So I'd like to end it in this way. Kamala Harris's vision for America is defined by pragmatism, progress, change, and hope. Her policies aim to uplift middle and lower income Americans, protect reproductive rights, and ensure a stable economy. But as Harris herself acknowledges, this election is about more than policy. It's about defending our democracy. As November 5th approaches, it's critical that every voice is heard, every vote is counted. The choice is clear: a future built on sensibility, hope, and practical solutions, or we have a return to chaos and division. Your vote has the power to shape the direction of our country. Now is the time to act. Kamala Harris has provided us many ideas of what she could do for America. Thank you for listening, and I encourage you to go vote.